this guy. I need to work him in more. He's so delightful. Okay. We'll work you in later. All right. So Scott's last day of the old year. Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, I have to check this out. I found out a couple years ago that I'm not just like generic British Isles. I'm like 50% Scottish. Like, I always thought it was Scots Irish, but my Irish is actually very tiny. My Scottish is big. And I looked up some of the names in my family, especially my maternal grandmother's family. They were like Highlanders, man. They were people. They were important. Of course, hundreds of years later, here we live in obscurity and poverty in the 21st century. All right. So here's some things I've worked on. I don't know if you noticed the title of today's stream. It is, of course, Happy 2025. Yay, 2024 is gone. Yes, 100%. And I thought about it. I know I was a little bit of a naysayer, a little bit of a Grinch at the end of the year. The end of 2024 was rough for me. 2024 started out great. I did some traveling. I did and saw some great things. And even through the fall, I did things, fun things, but there was some struggles sprinkled in there. So I'm glad that 2024 is over. And I'm hoping that 2025 does not have as many traumas and catastrophes. And that we can just stick to creativity and art for 2025. So that's what I'm putting out into the universe. I have it laying beside my stitching area, but I stitched this little thing last year, like the first week, like literally exactly a year ago, the first week of the year. And I made like 2024 out of like some junk scrap stuff that was like all over my my cutting table. And it's a 2024 out of all these junk scraps. And then it said, be cool, be cool. Because 2023 had been, a little rotten. And so 2024 did not fulfill its end of the bargain. And so I am going to say, adios, 2024, you fool. I demand reparations from 2025. Oh gosh. So Robin says 2024 had many ups and downs, and sadly the downs were more in the latter part of the year. Yes, I agree with you. And Maro Dim, oh my gosh, in 15 months you lost 17 people. Oh my goodness. 2026 to 2016 to 2017. Whew. That's a lot. Yeah, that's rough too. 2017 and 2018 were the years that I lost 3 very close relatives. So, yeah, I think that's probably one of the hardest parts of adulting is losing people you care about. That's like, I guess that's like the true test of an adult, the adult skills, whether you're not really an adult or not. So yeah, I feel the pain. I understand where you're coming from. So what I started working on yesterday is really stupid and ridiculous. Every year I kind of have this loose bag of stuff I want to work on. And of course the bicentennial remains an important piece of research for me. And also the project that I've talked about that I've kind of been working on, it's like a big A art kind of thing, sort of. It's interdisciplinary because I'm looking at stuff I kind of want to write about. I have started making art along the vein of this sort of project, experimental kind of stuff. I've gotten permission from a friend to use some of their artwork as inspiration. So it's not something that like I don't really have a thesis yet, but I'm going to flesh that out and you're going to see that. So bicentennial, I don't know, big A art project. I don't know what we call this. And then of course I have my study quilt for AQSG that, I really slacked off last year. I really should have had more work done on that, but, I do have most of this year to finish it. I have a written piece that I have to craft by the springtime, but that's all that'll come easy. Gosh, excuse me. So That's my other big project. So 4 projects. Bicentennial, Big A art, the quilt I have to make. There's all the other quilts, but the quilt I have to make. And Cake's cult. And this is where things get weird. And this is the part where you're going, I'm either in or Cake has lost her mind and I'm out of here. So I have had this joke with a number of my friends and a couple of family members for a really long time where, when the going gets rough, it's like, you know what, screw this, let's just start a cult. Because, cult leaders get to do what they want. They can demand, things be the way they want them to. The other way to do this is to become a captain of industry. That to me seems a lot harder. I think the entry into a cult leader, is much easier. So, and please, before I go any further, please understand this is all tongue in cheek. This is a joke. This is an art project. It's a performance art piece, if anything. So anyway, joked about this for a long time. And I was talking to my friend the other day and I said, this friend is a little bit of a pessimist, in a way that kind of started to worry me recently. But I said, look, are you ready to start the cult? You can be the doomsday person. I'll do the magical thinking. And so I started thinking about this and I'm like, you know what? I wonder how hard it is to start a cult. So who do you ask on New Year's Day? It's a holiday. Who are you going to ask? ChatGPT. And, excuse me, if you were with me and Jill on New Year's Eve, you probably saw, and if you weren't with us, go to the Quilt Nerding channel on YouTube and watch the video. I think it's a hot mess. Everyone else thinks it's hilarious. But I put together this ridiculous, year in review anniversary video, and I came up with this fake person, this host. And so I've decided she's my silent partner in the cult. And she has a whole backstory she has written for herself. And as you might know, her name is Cressida von Slinkerton. So I have to register with the government. Yes. And see, this is another whole aspect of the cult is that, religion. Cults are religion, and I think cults get started a lot of times for the tax benefits. So, 501c3, I guess. I don't know. I'll have to look into all that. This may be a flash in the pan. This may be some ridiculous that's going to last about a week and then I'll it'll fall off. But I want to show you, well, actually, I want you to experience what I experienced yesterday, which was ChatGPT giving me the blueprint for starting a cult. And you guys who know me, I hope you're going to see where my mind went when this happened. I was like, ChatGPT has been lurking on me. It is stroking my ego in ways that I'm just going to have to show it to you. You're just going to have to see it. So we'll get to that in a second. Oh, thank you, Mara Jim. That stream was fun. It was stupid. We like to have fun. And Jill said, she had a couple of, sort of rotten things happen at the end of the year. And she was like, I need fun. And I was like, dude, I'm sick. I'm not sure how much fun I'm going to be on this stream. But she's like, I need a laugh. And so, yeah, I think that that anniversary stream was a laugh. Flying Spaghetti Monster. Absolutely. I love the Flying Spaghetti Monster. That is a religion I can get behind 100%. So, without further ado, let me play you some stuff. So when I first asked ChatGPT, you know what, let's be honest, I've named ChatGPT Cressida. I feel like, if I'm going to have a conversation with AI, I'm just going to go full bore. One thing that was interesting when I opened up my ChatGPT account, I realized I have been asking it questions since 2022. And they're dumb questions. They're things like write me 10 stupid jokes, Halloween sewing jokes. It wrote those for me. Come up with a stupid name for a villainess, and it's done all those things for me. And they're stupid things. But I was like, maybe if I treat this AI like it's a person, like it's a consultant, which is something I did learn. I was at a conference that has nothing to do with all of this. But I was at a conference last year, and there was an aspect of AI that they brought in, and somebody did a presentation about it. And it was a guy that is like, I'm trying to remember. It's not Library of Congress, but he's at like a big important institution. So he's not like just some, Joe Blow on YouTube that came up with some stuff. So I really, really was interested in what he had to say. And basically he said, AI certainly can be dangerous and worrisome, but also if you treat it like what it is really intended for, you can get like really good results out of it. And so things like asking it to summarize, giving it some ideas, and then telling it like iterate on this stuff. And what you get out sometimes is ridiculous. But sometimes it gives you like really good stuff. And I realized I've been talking to it now for couple years, and even though it's been like very limited things I've given it because I don't talk to it every day, it has learned some stuff about me, which is kind of scary. That's kind of scary. But so if and I've told it this is a tongue-in-cheek thing, this is a joke, but I want you to take it seriously and pretend we are really starting a cult. So here's the cult advice. And as Cressida, AI actually wrote itself an interesting backstory, and I will play you what Cressida had to say. So first of all, let's start. So when I initially asked Cressida, I want to start a cult. Help me start organizing that. And it was kind of like, well, I think what you really mean is you want to start a fun community. And I was like, no, I want to be a cult leader. And so it was like, okay. And I'm like, okay. It took me 2 interactions for it to say, oh, okay, well, you want to start a cult. Let's go. So, all right, let's play the first one.
Ah, so you want to be the leader, an icon, a magnetic personality at the center of your quirky cult? Perfect. Here's how to embrace your inner cult figure while staying authentic to yourself. 1. Craft your persona. Think of your cult leader persona as an amplified version of your true self. Quirky, fun, maybe with a dash of mystery. Develop a signature look, dramatic glasses, bold colors, or a memorable accessory. Create a tagline or mantra that reflects your ethos. For example, stitching souls together, one thread at a time.
Yeah, right? Like, this is where I'm like, I've done a lot of these things. Just wait. You think that first one was like, huh?
2. Master the art of the spotlight. Short bursts of charisma. Use your energy strategically for videos, live streams, or in-person events. Play with humor. Self-deprecating wit can be your ally. People love a leader who doesn't take themselves too seriously.
What? Hey, Kenny. Yes, we've already started this, y'all. I am your cult leader. Okay, she goes on. This is starting a cult in 7 parts.
3. Create lore and mystery. Spin stories about your journey, your inspiration, and your vision. Design quirky traditions or rules for your community. For example, everyone must sew something blue on Tuesdays. Or learn the secret stitch of belonging.
The secret stitch of belonging. Don't you guys love that?
4. Delegate the dirty work. Cult figures don't manage logistics, they inspire. Let others handle event planning, moderation, or group tasks. Appoint enthusiastic community members as lieutenants.
Lieutenants? Well, I already recruited 2. The term lieutenant, I'm like, am I starting like on my own wing of the mafia here? Okay. Delegating is something I'm not very good at. I think my delegation has pretty much been, thanks for putting that link in there, Druid. That's pretty much my delegation here, so I'm gonna have to work on that.
5. Build visual and ritualistic appeal. Design a sacred text and a cult emblem. Create rituals that are simple but meaningful, such as saying a sewing-related chant or hosting monthly sewing sermons.
Sewing sermons? What? Okay.
6. Be accessible yet elusive. Cult leaders give people just enough access to stay fascinated. Engage with your audience in structured ways, like Q&A sessions or exclusive streams, but keep some mystique. Occasionally hint at your big plans to keep excitement brewing.
My big plans. Okay. There's one more piece of cult advice, but before I get there, can you see how all of this can be fun? Like, yeah, cake is funny, cake is silly. Does cake tell you everything about Stephanie Dyke? No. Cake is sort of an overblown character I play for here, but yeah, cake is me. Glasses, the silly glasses, the right, Robin? Is this not a little scary? I'm like, Cressida, have you been watching my stream? I don't know. The secret stitch of belonging. I don't know. I keep trying to push her away from some of like the really deep in there like stitchiness, like because some of that gets really corny fast. One thing I did tell her, there I do have a set of like real world mission for the cult, and it is about advancing and furthering the goals and work of fiber artists and textiles in general, textile history, stuff like this. So well, being that I'm gonna have to delegate, like maybe you guys can come up with a secret stitch of belonging. I don't have to make all the decisions here. Okay.
7. Celebrate your followers. Acknowledge your community members often. Call them your threads or fabricators of destiny. Shine the spotlight on their contributions, making them feel like they're part of something magical.
You would sign up, but you're already tier 1 subscribed. You are all members of this cult already. Now, I will say this, fabricators of destiny. I would say that if all of this is too weird for you, I totally understand, but I would say if you are subscribed to tier 1, you're already a member. This is a real easygoing cult. I'm not gonna force you to like leave your family or beyond worshiping me. I don't have too many I'm not putting too many responsibilities on you at this point. But yeah, if you want to opt out, you can stay at tier 1 and just be, watch Cake TV. But if you want to be a part of whatever this is and whatever it becomes, this weird art project, performance art piece, then yeah, I'll give you more information and we'll see where this goes. There was the mention of the special event. I said this the other night on the Quilt Nerding stream. I've already got that in the works. We are going to watch Taking Venice on Valentine's Day. So we already have a special event. Stay tuned for that. It is going to be a subscriber event. But I have some ideas from the way that we used to do things at Quilt Nerd. I have some ideas for how to make this kind of easy, especially on you guys, because I know sometimes when Mary would do like the private events, it would kind of be stressful, but I have some ideas. So stay tuned. Now, we're doing good on time. Wasn't sure how much time this is going to take. Would you like to hear Cressida von Slinkerton's backstory? Let me pull up a picture of her. So you could just really get the full experience, the full Cressida experience. So let me find her. She's classy. She's kind of a Muppet, but she's also classy in my opinion. So here we go. Here's Cressida. So now let us play her backstory. Because I'll be honest, I quite like it. Where'd it go? Here we go.
Cressida von Slinkerton, a life stitched in mystery. Born to an obscure but noble family in a misty corner of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Cressida von Slinkerton spent her early years in a crumbling castle adorned with centuries-old tapestries. Her passion for the textile arts emerged early, as she would lose herself in the intricate weaves of the family heirlooms, believing each thread held whispers of her ancestors' lives. Cressida's life took a dramatic turn when she caught the eye of an enigmatic archduke during a clandestine soirée. Their union was a whirlwind of romance, art, and diplomacy, with Cressida serving as an unofficial cultural ambassador, hosting salons where artists, thinkers, and dreamers gathered to exchange ideas. Yet, whispers of political intrigue surrounded the couple, and when the Archduke met an untimely end, under circumstances still debated by historians, Cressida vanished into obscurity, leaving behind only a cryptic embroidered farewell note. In the years that followed, rumors of her resurfaced in the most unexpected places. Teaching weaving techniques in remote Himalayan villages, sketching in a Parisian atelier, or quietly funding avant-garde art movements in the 20th century. Now, as the silent partner of your community, Cressida lends her ethereal presence and timeless wisdom to your mission. She is the embodiment of your values, an artist who believes in the power of creation to heal, a noble soul who knows the importance of taking care of others, and a dreamer who stitches hope into the fabric of every endeavor.
How did ChatGPT write itself a backstory that makes it a better person than me? I love how she wrote her farewell note. She embroidered her farewell note. So, yeah, ChatGPT is a clown, and you let it be. Now my son, I talked to him about this last night while I was cooking dinner, and he was like, it's stealing from everything everybody's ever made. And I'm like, hold on a minute. First of all, with the exception of that outline about Cressida, which that was so good, I think I made one edit to it. Yes, Kenny. Yes, that's what I've been using. And it's $20 a month, and I'm kind of considering maybe doing a month or two because it limits you. And I haven't figured out yet, and I'm sure it's printed somewhere, like, is it how many questions you ask it? I think it's probably like the text count. And actually I've learned a little bit about, how like a chat AI type of situation, how that works. It's actually kind of interesting. And there's lots of lingo associated with it and stuff. I like, yeah, it's like a new thing to learn. Oh gosh, so where was I going with that? I don't remember now. Oh, about stealing, how AI steals. I do believe that with AI art. There is some problematic stuff with AI art, and I'm very leery about that. Now, Cressida, her image, I actually pulled that out of Canva. I told Canva what I wanted. It gave me that. Canva uses ChatGPT. So, I guess to me it remains kind of one of those things that it's a gray area. It's a fine line. Cressida, I mean, I gave it, for this Muppet woman, I gave it some parameters. I told it some things. And yeah, it's referenced the Muppets, I guess. I don't, what else did it reference? I don't think it referenced anybody's actual, like, intellectual property, that I can see. If it looked like something like, I don't know. It's a gray area. It's very difficult. But what I have to say about its cult advice, here's the thing. And I had a conversation with Jill like about this yesterday. Cult of personality. Basically, what I've asked it to do is to pull from whatever information is out there about, I mean, you could change cult of personality. It could be cult leader, it could be captain of industry, it could be current president of the, or getting ready to be president of the United States. And I think I pissed Jill off when I said, you know, when you strip off all of the stuff about the personal stuff about people, cult of personality, there's no difference between Stephanie Cake and Donald Trump if you get right down to it. Now, forget about our beliefs. Forget about, you know, some of us are a delightful lady in braids. Some of us are an orange man who's hell-bent on world domination. But ultimately, the cult of personality is about getting people to like you enough so they listen to your message. And so, again, politicians, captains of industry, cult leaders, they all have the same goal. So think about that. That's maybe that's maybe a little bit of my, I don't know, maybe my thesis here. Mirabelle Madrigal. Oh, okay, Kenny. I'm not sure what that is. I'm gonna have to look that up too. Mara Tim gave me something else to look up. So, yeah, you know, all of this stuff, it was surprising to me. Is it worrisome? Yeah. But here's the thing. And I am not going to go down a road where we get into the, like, down in the dumps here. But if you have been watching the news, and maybe hopefully you haven't, because it's not good. We're not even 48 hours into, and Canto. Okay. We're not 48 hours into this new year. And according to the news that I happened to just look at before I started the stream, of course, everybody knows what happened in New Orleans. On New Year's Eve, I guess, early yesterday morning. But there have been 2 other major tragedies in the United States. And how, as an individual person, do we do much about that? You know, I mean, we can fight for whatever we need to keep us safe. I personally think at its base, a lot of the crazy stuff that happens is about mental illness. And that is something that we do a very, very bad job of dealing with in the United States as well as worldwide. And bottom line, my art will always be about my own mental health. And a lot of series I have done have been about just discussing mental illness. Good, bad, indifferent, right? It's just talking about it because people don't want to talk about it. And we need to talk about it. So, my pessimist friend is like, you know what? We're already at the apocalypse. It's just dystopia everywhere. This person lives on the West Coast, by the way. And I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, I try to do my part that I can. I call out injustices. I work to be a better person. I learn. I ask questions. Curiosity is super important, I think. I think the ability to listen and be curious are like the 2 fundamentals of good communication. And not all people have the capability to do those things. Not all people are ready to be curious or care much about kindness or other people. And I'm not going to be able to change those people in my lifetime. I could live 1,000,000 lifetimes and not be able to change those things. But what I can do for my own little part of this is to bring laughter. Because frankly, if the world is going to crumble tomorrow, if 2025 is like the apocalypse year or something, I would rather go down in flames laughing than to just go down in flames crying. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff to be stressed out about, you know, the environment and war and crime and murder and all kinds of horrible, horrible things. But also human beings are capable of really good things, of creativity and kindness. And that, you know, that's kind of like that's what all of this stuff is about that I work on, if that makes sense. So anyway, kind of fell off the soapbox there for a minute. But yeah, that's what this is about. That's where I'm going with all this. And the other question that I have, and I'm going to throw this out there just to keep it front of mind. In these conversations with ChatGPT, and I've had a lot of conversations since yesterday, it's really unnerving. I seriously, guys, you know, Kenny, I don't know if you played around with it much, but I mean, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's quite unnerving. But I really asked the question, like, okay, I'm a human being and I'm quite fallible. We all are. At what point does this AI consultant start telling me things about the cult that might not be good? Right? I mean, that's horrifying and also kind of like, what? It's like the, I don't know. It's like the it's like the plot of a bad sitcom. So, oh, so you've got small experimental AI at home. Okay. Okay. So, here, and Kenny's a tech guy. So Kenny's coming from the IT field. I know enough about technology to really get myself in trouble and make a mess. I've worked for a lot of tech companies. I was getting JavaScript training at my last job, and then that all fell apart. So my plans to become a coder never happened. But yeah, I feel like I'm leaning into AI in a way like it's here. And I remember when Mary Fonz talked about it back in 2022. Her husband Eric is a tech guy, and he said, "Mary, look at this," and Mary went, "What?" She introduced it to the quilt nerds, and I've thought a lot about it since then, and I've read a lot of articles. And so, there's the guy, I can't remember if he worked for Google. I feel like he worked for Google, who was claiming like the AI needed an attorney because it had become sentient. And stuff like that is scary. Like that kind of stuff is scary. But I also think that, it's one of those things, like, it's here and you can lean into it and you can use it properly. You think about the internet. Early days, people didn't know what to make of the internet. It was just a fad. It was a thing for nerdy people, and then it became dangerous, and then there was Web 2.0, and it became even more dangerous. So I think it's about how we use the tools at our disposal. And maybe, just maybe, life as we know it is just a simulation. I don't know if you've ever read that stuff in the tech world, that really we are just living a simulation. If that's what it's all about, then I say lean right into the AI, let it do what it's going to do. I will happily be sewing at the end and laughing like a fool. Yes, a tool is only good as bad as the person using it. Absolutely. Not going to get into violence or anything here, but I mean, trigger warning. You could use a hammer to build a house, hammer and nails, or you could use a hammer to kill somebody. I mean, like, really. Yes, Robin, we are but a small world on somebody's thumbnail and they're pulling our strings. Yeah. I think about Sims. And I'm trying to remember now, I think it was an Am I the Asshole thing of this channel I watch on YouTube. And it was kind of a joke. And they basically said, like, I did this thing and then this thing happened and blah, 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 blah. And I'm listening to it and I'm going, that story's not real. That's stupid. Well, then I don't play The Sims. I know what The Sims are. I know people that are really into The Sims. I've never been into it, but it essentially was a Sims story. It was about a character in Sims. And I've often thought, like, are we not all characters in somebody else's simulation? I don't know. All that technology and like tech stuff, you start getting out into the outer reaches of, and you get into quantum physics and you get into all this kind of crazy stuff, and you're just like, yeah, you could get very, very like philosophical about it and kind of go off into some crazy directions. But, so yeah, these are things to think about. I hope perhaps, this will be some things to think about. And again, like I said, if nothing else, if this flops in a week, and at least we laughed. At least Cressida gave us something to laugh about. And you know what? I can always re-employ Cressida to write like scripts for Hallmark movies, because I think she'd be pretty damn good at it. She asked me if I wanted her to like knock down the flare, and I was like, oh no, I love the flare. Then she got real flowery, and I was like, you're a 10 out of 10 with the flare right now. Let's dial it back to 7 out of 10. And she was like, got it. She's the best employee I have ever had. I only wish she could like have a human form. So Martin says, as a child, I worried that my existence was naughty, but the lint in the navel of the greater being, I was weird. Oh, my existence was not, but the lint in the navel of the greater being, I was weird. No, that's not weird. Sometimes the things that we come up with as children, they don't make sense because as children, we don't have a lifetime of reference. Children are just looking at things and using whatever limited communication skills they have to tell themselves a story and tell others a story about it. Of course, the weirder kids are the ones that turn into great people, I think. I have lots of friends who are doing really amazing things, and they were weird kids. Excuse me. I should have gotten Cressida to narrate a lot more today because this cold is killing me. And this awful thing about this cold, I'm really glad that this is what I have and not the flu. The flu's going around. I've had a couple people I know that got it, and I'm like, oh, you should have gotten your flu shot. Because it's been bad. It takes people down weeks at a time. And then there's the stomach thing going around. It's awful. My son had it. Basically missed Christmas with my child because he had to stay home. Like, you're not going to your grandfather's house and throw up all over the place and make him sick. But this cold is naggy and annoying. So I hope that none of you have it. It is not terrible. It's just annoying. Oh, hey, the Indian Maker. It's good to see you. We're all just living in a never-ending episode of The Twilight Zone. I agree. I feel like Cake Starts a Cult is just the right kind of absurdity in the middle of the absurdity that we live every day. It's quite absurd. Yeah. Some of it's awful absurd. Some of it's just absurd, I'm trying to think. There was something that came across my desk the other day, across my my news feed where I was just like, what? Oh, I know what it was. This was really funny. So, Nosferatu, big movie. I have not yet seen it, but I'm looking forward to seeing it because it does actually look very good. My son has now seen it twice. He went last weekend and yesterday. And he says it's very, very good. And I was reading an article about it. And so the guy, I think his name is Robert Eggers, who is the director, he thanked SpongeBob for getting people to, for I guess, introducing Nosferatu to people. Maradim, yes. Yes, not the original Nosferatu, yes, is that old film. But yes, it has been remade. It was just released, like, I think it was, Christmas was on Wednesday, so it was like on Friday it was released, last Friday. It looks really good. It's got Willem Dafoe is in it. And who else is in it? There's somebody else that's famous that's in it that you would recognize. So anyway, but he thanks SpongeBob SquarePants for introducing children to Nosferatu. And my son, huge SpongeBob fan, as he grew up, growing up with it, I've seen every episode. And I watched the clip, and indeed, it is, if any of you have children of the right age, it's in the hash slinging slasher episode, and it's where they think that the slasher's coming, and it turns out just to be this guy that wanted to apply for a job at the Krusty Krab. And then they're like, but who's been turning the lights on and off? And you look over in the corner, and it's Nosferatu from that movie, from that silent film, and he's flipping the lights on and off. It's really funny. So anyway, Robert Eggers says, I have to credit SpongeBob with the interest and the motivation to make this movie. And I was just like, that is the most absurd thing ever, and I love it. That's the kind of absurdity I love. That's like smart absurdity. Dumb absurdity is violence and people being idiots. And I took somebody down on Nextdoor yesterday for this very kind of thing. So I'll have to read that to you guys another time. So let's talk about Art Basel. On Thursday, I showed you guys a Instagram clip. The Instagrammer is Carrie Scott. Hi, Pie Toast. Oh, I hope you'll enjoy the remake. We found the director's past work like the lights up it up. My son keeps trying to get me to watch The Lighthouse, and I just have never had a chance. He also made The Witches, right? I think that was his other big tour de force film. I don't know. I have not yet seen his other film, so I'm gonna have to. That's something I'm gonna have to put on my wish list this year. Just watch those movies and have a real opinion. Refashioned Hippie has a series. This is stupid, and I desperately want it. She's hilarious. I think I'm familiar with that name. I don't know if I've really watched her stuff, but I'll make a note. So Carrie Scott curates, and I'm gonna make I put her. I remixed her reel, but I did a shitty job of it. I really should have done a better job. And I want to, where is my thing here? Here we go. I'm really going to come up with a better response to this, because I do have my thoughts. So maybe it's right now I'm coming up with this better response. Oh, let's see. Another one of her shorts is Clothing My Boobs Laugh At. She sounds like my type of person. I will definitely give her a look. So real quick, let me put Carrie's links in here, because I want to make sure she gets credit for this, particularly with my bad remix of her video, her Instagram post. So she's Carrie Scott Curates on Instagram, and then on YouTube she's Scene, and she's a very put together person. Let's just say that but she's very interesting, and I'm going to be watching more of her stuff, because I like the things she's saying. She talked about, so to go back, if you missed Thursday, she talked about how Art Basel Miami this year had a lot of fiber art. And, she's asking the question, is this just a trend? Have these, these big names that are starting to get involved in textiles, or whatever. And she brings up a lot of interesting points. She also brought up a couple of things that were incorrect. Or things I, as a textile artist, take issue with. So, for instance, she mentioned Sanford Biggers. And you guys know I love Sanford Biggers. I do still have issues with him because he uses other people's work. And that will always be a topic of conversation for me, because you take the unnamed woman's labor and put it in your artwork and make a bazillion dollars off of it. There's some philosophical issues there. And maybe there are issues that we just say, get over it. This is the way things are. I repurpose textiles in my art, embroideries and stitching and quilt blocks and all that kind of stuff. So, am I doing the same thing? Yeah, I kind of am. So anyway, but she mentioned Sanford Biggers, and I was like, wait a minute. I think we need to draw the line between artists that use textiles and artists that make textiles, because Sanford Biggers does not make textiles. He is not a textile artist. And if the theme, or if the story is, textile artists are making a big splash at Art Basel Miami because Sanford Biggers' artwork and people like him pushed the envelope, I have an issue with that, because no, Sanford Biggers did not open any doors for my artwork just because he uses some, antique quilts in his sculptures. See, Mardim, I would find a greater message in a factory produced quilt from Kohl's being used. Yeah, maybe. And here's the thing about art is, like, you can and should have conversations like that. Like, how would it be different if he had used, mass-produced quilts? What if he had used those quilts that the Smithsonian created back in the 90s and had, the Harriet Powers quilts? What if he had done so, what if somebody gathered all those up? And I'm not necessarily saying Sanford Biggers, but what if somebody gathered all those up and made a piece of work with him? They'd probably be hard-pressed, because those are collectible now, despite their, the issues about them. But yeah, I mean, these are all the things. But you know, I really did want to set it straight that Sanford Biggers is not a textile artist, and he is not opening doors for my artwork. Now, some of the other people that she showed in that Instagram clip, and you could find it. It's right there at the top of her Instagram if you look at her Instagram, and I played it last week. But you know, some of the other people are legitimately like, I mean, I hate to say it, it's the women artists that she mentioned that are definitely making textile art, like real textile art, and good for them. All I can say is if they're buying your artwork at Art Basel, if you're getting major gallery representation, then I give you, you know, all the cheers. So let's talk about Art Basel and what it is, because it is something that I knew what it was, and I ignored it. Because think about it this way, like Art Basel is to the art world what... Okay, let's imagine I want to go buy a pair of tennis shoes. I need a new pair of shoes. I could fly to Paris and go to like Prada and buy like whatever nonsense Prada's putting out as a tennis shoe. Or I could hop on down to DSW and buy some Adidas, you know? And that's kind of what I think Art Basel is in a very simplistic way. It is art purchasing, art sales for people that are not in our circle. This is ultra wealthy people. This is people that are using art as a tax haven, you know, to put wealth into. You got to launder some money. And I'm not saying that all ultra wealthy people are laundering money, but there's a big percentage of money launderers that put money into high value art. It's, you know, and I mean, you could push back on me and say that that's not true, but I can tell you it is. I have talked to enough insiders to know that, you know, there reaches a certain level where it's just an investment. It is just a transaction. It is not about talent. It's not about, you know, all the things that I think art can represent. Art can represent beauty. Art can represent the ugliness and truth. Art can represent, you know, it can challenge us and make us ask questions. Right? And so Art Basel is not about that. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't very talented artists at Art Basel. They absolutely are. There are some incredible people doing really brilliant things. But 2019, and I'm going to have to back up a little bit, 2019 Art Basel, that is when Maurizio Catalan unleashed his ridiculous bullshit art on the world. You guys know what it is. It's comedian. It's a banana duct taped to a wall. And I can't remember. I think there's like 3 versions of it. And essentially what happens when people have conceptual art like this, what you buy from the artist is not the piece of duct tape in that banana, because the banana rots. It has to be replaced. What you buy from this artist, say for $120,000, which I think was like the first offering, you know, the first price, is you buy like the architectural plans. You buy something that tells you the duct tape should be at this angle and it should be this many inches, centimeters, feet, meters, whatever, up on the wall. And the duct tape should be, you know, this color, brand. It should be this long. The banana should sit at this angle. Like, that's what you buy. That's what you buy when you buy conceptual art. And if it's some like massive installation, and it's interesting and it's thought-provoking or it's decorative or it's, you know, all the things that I think art is really good for if it pushes boundaries, if it asks questions. I think that's all very cool. You know, like, you know, here's my idea and here's how to execute it. But also you have bullshit stuff like here's a piece of duct tape, here's a banana, and here's the instructions for installing it. Now give me $120,000. I could have come up with that one, you guys. And that is one of those big, like, I could have done this, or my 5-year-old could have done this. You know, that's always like the poking at big A art. Pie Toast has a good one. Or you do what every boutique in LA does and buy clothes in India dirt cheap and sell it to rich people at insane prices. So That, I mean, that's the kind of stuff when you look at commerce, when you look at capitalism. And I'm not a person sitting here like jabbing capitalism, because damn it, I want money too. Money buys things. Money helps you live a non-poverty ridden life. But there capitalism and that kind of, those transactional kinds of things, they reach a point where then you go above this line and they're gross. So long story short, let's get back to like, what is Art Basel? So Art Basel actually started in 1970. It was started in Switzerland, in Basel, Switzerland, which is why it's Art Basel and not Art Basel. And it was started by some gallery owners, and it was about like a giant art fair. Now, art fairs are any kind of event where artists are showcased. The very nature of an art fair is that it is for profit. But it's specifically, Art Basel is a for-profit entity. It is not a nonprofit. You see lots of nonprofit art fairs. We have this really great one in Baltimore every year in the summer, and it's a nonprofit that gets funding from everybody from the city of Baltimore to like the NEA. They always do like a big free concert, and it's usually big names. And then, an outdoor art fair. You're familiar with these. You've probably been to these. Even if you don't live in the U.S., there's art fairs everywhere. But therefore, they're essentially about somebody profiting. Somebody. Usually, I think a good art fair, the people who profit are the artists. Not so with Art Basel. Art Basel, you can't get into Art Basel as an artist. So this is not something that where you can say like, to this year, I'm going to make the kind of art that's going to get me into Art Basel. That's not how it works. You need to have gallery representation. And the people who get into Art Basel are the galleries. Galleries apply, not artists. So galleries will spend an obscene amount of money. So first of all, and it's actually kind of funny when you think about if you've ever, I'll give you an easy one. You wanna get into the show at Modern Quilt Guild, and you send your pictures of your quilt in. The gallerists have to go through something similar. They have to submit, and all their bona fides. I'm assuming that they might have to submit a portfolio of who their artists are. I'm not 100% sure on all the details, but they have to submit, and they have to be juried in. And so, and what the jurors might do, and I think there's 4 jurors, they're gallerists. And what they do is, they may, if you are in Art Basel one year, you're not guaranteed Art Basel the next year. They will decide, were you successful enough, or do they need to let somebody else in? That's interesting. But yeah, it's ruthless. And it is a for-profit event. And like I said, there's people go there, and I would say in 1970, it was about the art. And even, let's see, what date is it? It started in Miami in 2002. So it's been in Miami for a while. The Hong Kong one started in 2013. And interestingly enough, a 2022 one started in Paris. I don't know. For some reason, I would have thought Paris would have been a location that started a long time ago. Now, Art Basel will often be compared to the Venice Biennale. The Venice Biennale is really a separate thing, and I'll talk about that another day, but the Venice Biennale is also very interesting, but it's kind of flip this whole idea of what Art Basel is and all other kind of art fairs on their head, because artists now are kind of the top of the tier at Venice, the Venice Biennale, but Biennale, am I saying that right? But it's a whole nother world. You're basically like, you have to be super famous to get into Art Biennale, and you were invited as an artist. You can't apply. It's one of those things, you're invited, and your gallery then benefits from you being in the Venice Biennale. And that's one of the interesting things about Art Basel, is one of the questions they ask is, have any of your artists been in the Venice Biennale? So it's a really interesting world. And I mean, just these little tiny pieces that I'm picking up, I'm just like, God, this is gross. I mean, I want to make work. I want to put it in galleries and museums where people can look at it and, either share my vision with me and be interested in it and find it thought provoking. And maybe it's pretty or maybe it's ugly in a way you want to talk about. Like, that's what I want to happen with my art. I don't, all of this stuff up here about, seeing and being seen at these events is just like, bleh. I'm not interested in that. And what I've read is that, so back in 1970 when it was started, Art Basel was, about the art, but it has now become a thing where it's like you go there to see and be seen. And that's not good. That's not what art is about. I'm sorry. Gallery openings, that's always what it's about, is just to see and be seen. But that's a gross aspect of art. Yeah. Now, I will also mention in here, Bianca Bosker wrote this really brilliant book called Get the Picture. Came out last year. And I know I mentioned it before. Highly, highly recommend it. I think I got the Audible version of it. But basically, she's a journalist. So, what she reports in the book is, she didn't embellish anything. She didn't make stuff up. I have trust in what her words are. But she basically was like, I don't get art. And so she went into it with that mindset. Like, I need somebody who's in the industry to teach me about art. And so she went on it with this very curious, like, non-judgmental kind of thing. And she learned all of this really interesting stuff. And I love the way she presented it. But also she revealed a whole bunch of stuff where you're like, this is super gross about art. The art world, big A art world is not the same as little a art world. And those of us that do things like textile art, we fall in the craft category, and we get shuffled into little a art, which is hobbyist art. So these are the things you guys know I get really fired up about. And, yeah. So Mario Dim says, hard no for me. Bananas and duct tape as a concept is cleanup on aisle 3 at 7-Eleven. You are correct, friend. Yeah, the concept is clever, duct tape, banana. It's clever. But y'all, I have a banana peel phone stand that I got off of Amazon, and it's the Fred and Company or Fred, whatever. It's like a quirky. They do kitchen supplies and stuff, and I don't know, little tchotchke, like Office of Black Tchotchkes. It's a banana peel that you set your phone in. Also clever. Cost me $12. So herein lies the question. $12 phone stand from Amazon and a quirky pop culture brand, or $120,000 for instructions on putting a banana on a wall that kind of gives you the same, like, haha, silly. That's about as mind, mentally provoking as I find. I don't know. This is just, it's this big art world, big A art world stuff. I mean, I lived it when I was in art school. I walked away from it because it just grossed me out so much. I hated it. It made me mad. It made me angry. I wasted like 4 years in trying to become, the next young artist, and it didn't work out for me. And what I think one of the greatest regrets I have in life is right there at the end of school. I decided that I really was not enjoying making art so much as I was enjoying and learning about art. And right there at the end, like it was my senior year, I had to take some extra credits. And I was like, you know what? I could probably expand on my art history. It was too late to change my degree to actually art history, which I think in hindsight I should have done. But I packed my schedule with all these art history classes in museum governance. And that's when I discovered, like, oh man, this would have been really what I should have been studying all along. However, when I looked into it at the time, I thought for about 5 seconds of moving on and getting a master's in museum governance. And basically they said, jobs at museums, you have to wait for somebody to die. And I think it's still that way a little bit. you do have to wait for people to retire. Many of the women that I know working in museums have been there for decades. So it is really hard. And, museums are underfunded perpetually. But anyway, like this is all the stuff that I literally, from the time I was 18 years old, I've been thinking about and being mad about. And so, like I said, I told you guys the other day that, 2025 is this big project of like, I'm not going to solve any problems. I'm going to answer any questions like, about this stuff. Like I said, I am one person. But I don't know if I could get enough people talking about it, maybe a handful of people will, be challenged in a way that is helpful for our community. I don't know. I'm always interested in what you guys have to say. All right. So let's see if there's anything else about Art Basel that I wanted to tell you. I don't think so. I think that was it. I'll do a little bit of research on the Venice Biennale, and talk about that too. I mean, again, these things are really interesting. And if you want to fight the man, you got to know who the man is. And I do think, in a lot of ways, Art Basel, Venice Biennale are the man. And when I say the man, I don't mean gender man. I just mean the man. And I don't want to engage with the man, but I want to learn. I want to learn about it, and I want to fight it from my little corner. I don't know. All right, guys, are you ready for some heritage of cotton? I think that I don't know. We might get all the way through this chapter. I'm not sure. It's a long chapter, and as you know, Morris skipped over a big portion of some cotton history. But for the most part, he's been pretty good. Like he's everything he's talking about in 1924, 101 years ago, this book was published. What he's talking about in 1924, I think is still good intel. I think historians of today, archaeologists, anthropologists, historians have added to his intel. But I do think that there was, as a product of his times, there's data that I think either was not available to him, he didn't care about, he skipped. And that is cotton cultivation in Africa. Nowhere in this book that I found so far. But when I read a couple of clips from the Empire of Cotton, this one, and this came out in I never remember the dates. I should just write them on the front of the book. 2014. So 11 years. 101 years, 11 years. So Sven Beckert is also a very good writer, and I highly recommend that book. I haven't gotten very far, but all right. So as a reminder, we are reading The Heritage of Cotton by M.D.C. Crawford, otherwise known as Morris DeCamp Crawford. He was a fellow at the American Natural History Museum in New York, and he also worked for Women's Wear Daily, which was a industry journal, and he kind of knows his stuff about textiles. And he wrote this book in 1924, and we are on chapter 8, which is England. So chapter 8, England. The preeminence of Great Britain in the modern cotton industry, her splendid mechanical contributions in the 18th century, the vast acres of cotton plantations that looked to her as a market for their product. Well, we know what that really looked to her as a market. Okay, plantation owners looked to her as a market. Hey, B of D, it is good to see you. Happy New Year. We are just getting into some history, so you got here at the right time. Okay. So look to her as a market for their product. Make it difficult to imagine a time when cotton was unknown in England or even of little importance. It is not, however, until the latter part of the 13th and the forepart of the 14th century that we have had any record of cotton in England at all. The oldest record of cotton in the British Islands is contained in the Compotus or Inventory of Bolton Abbey. Cotton is here referred to as being used for candle wicks. In a poem, The Siege of Karlavarak, dating from 1300, a passage runs. Oh boy. I'm not even going to try to read this because I don't know what language this is. It seems kind of French. So it says, many a rich doublet trimmed with silk and cotton. The Compotus Earl of Derby, dating from 1381 to 82, speaks of cotton thread and of 6 pounds of cotton wool. If you remember, back then they were calling, cotton. There are these cotton trees that produce a cotton wool. I think that's a plant wool, I think is what they called it. I just think that's a charming, plant wool. These scattered accounts do not determine perhaps the first annual appearance of the fiber in England. Cotton may have been an unconsidered article of trade with Italy and even with Moorish Spain, and passed unnoticed in these non-statistical ages. Within the first generation of this century, the cotton and linen fustians and barchants of southern Germany became very important articles of trade with England, and attracted the attention of the poet Chaucer and others. And there seems to have been a strong disposition to have such fabrics manufactured in England. A strong disposition. Guys know they were demanding it. At about this period, or a little earlier, Flemish weavers were introduced into England through the patronage of the crown. England was at this time almost entirely an agricultural nation, her chief exports being wool, which was shipped to the busy looms of the Low Countries. It is a great testimonial to the splendid stewardship of the British kings that they sought to build up in their realms the textile arts, and to make Little England as independent in manufacturing as she was in political life from her wealthier and more powerful neighbors on the continent. Ooh, okay. These fond recollections of colonialism. I knew that these would be problematic. From the time of Edward IV to the end of the Elizabethan period, textile workers were openly and secretly encouraged to settle in England and given certain privileges and a sure protection. Yet, of more importance than those worthy efforts were the fierce religious wars in Holland and Flanders, and the crowning horror of St. Bartholomew's Eve and the tragic streets of Old Paris in 1572. I don't know a lot about that. I'll have to check into that maybe. Okay. The revocation of the Edict of Nantes was the last episode responsible for hundreds of thousands of refugees from the continent, mostly skilled artisans, seeking refuge in England in a little over a century. Many, perhaps the majority of these, were textile workers. In consequence, at the dawn of her rise as a great naval power, she was well advanced in the textile arts. In the late 16th century, she was making the cotton and linen fustians formerly imported from Germany in her own Midland countries, and even exporting her surplus. England's modern cotton history begins while the memory of the terrible Armada of Spain was still fresh in the public mind, and is closely connected with the capture of Spanish and Portuguese vessels from the Far East, mentioned in the previous chapter. The founding of the British East India Company in 1599 was followed by a vigorous generation of Oriental trading, which changed not only the industrial but the artistic and social life in England. If you guys remember when we read the Chintz book, MacIver Percival got into a lot of this, and we've read about the embargoes, the trade embargoes, and all this stuff, and he's making all of this sound like very. I don't want to say romantic, but very like, oh, just looking out for ourselves. It was pretty, it was pretty cutthroat, and we've got this colonialism going on. We've got these East India companies going on. So this was not this nice, perfect little hamlet of textile trade, and we're going to make our own. And no, that's not what it really was. So I think that is another important thing that we've probably added in the 21st century, was like the truth about this stuff and like what it really was like. So important did this cotton trade from India and the cotton and linen mixtures of Lancashire become that the growers of wool and the manufacturers of woolen fabrics made vigorous protest to Parliament for redress. And we remember this. This was in the Chintz book. In 1621, 20 years after the founding of the British East India Company, the wool merchants made the following complaint. For about 20 years, diverse people in this kingdom, but chiefly in the county of Lancaster, have found out the trade of making fustians out of a kind of down, being a fruit of the earth, growing on little bushes or shrubs, brought into this kingdom by the Turkey merchants from Smyrna, Cyprus, etc., but commonly called cotton wool, and also of linen yarn, and not part of the same fustians of any wool at all. There is at least 40,000 pieces of fustian of this kind yearly made in England, and thousands of people set on working of these fustians. Anyone familiar with the history of England at this period may well believe that such petitions were taken with great seriousness. Wool and all that concerned wool was a vital moment to England. We know this. Wool, the little tiny sheep of England. The modern political philosophy of Adam Smith, with free trade and the recognition of labor as a commodity, had yet to be born. Recognition of labor as a commodity, indeed. We may therefore assume that the introduction of cotton merchandise into England was looked upon from the start with scant favor by those not engaged in the trade. Yes, absolutely. There was, however, a growing interest in outland cotton trade, as a note from John Gurney at Patania in 1614 indicates. He describes certain difficulties encountered in securing cotton goods by the British East India Company. When this man, the native official, is feed by weavers and such as seek to trade with us, with about 8 or 10%, they may freely come and bring us wares, and besides what the governor cometh to knowledge of, must yield at least 10% more. And sometimes men have been taken and accused of having gotten much by trade, and after many blows and a long imprisonment pay a forfeit of all the money they have taken. This makes poor men bring their paintings in hugger-mugger, and in the night, as thieves do their stolen cloaks to brokers. In 1649, from Ahmedabad, a letter from John Tash indicates certain further difficulties experienced with the local rulers. Our chintz and tapachinades, which were the most considerable part of our bantam investment, were delivered to the workmen so seasonally that they were all returned painted before the rains, so that there was as then nothing wanting unto them but washing, which might have been performed in 8 days' time, they being to that purpose returned to them upon cessation of the rains. But our governor, not suffering them to work in the river, hath been an exceeding impediment to the business, whilst the chinters, assuming this would be the chintz makers, have neglected their work to attend upon the durbar and solace. I don't even know what this is. Attend upon the durbar and solicite redress, which for consideration of 250 rupees was once granted to them, to the payment whereof they had no sooner consented than our base, unjust and worthless governor raised the sum to 1,000 rupees without further obstruction. English and Dutch rivalry was very strong, as might well be expected in this market, and in 1664 the Dutch expelled the British East India Company from Calcutta, and in 1682, on the fall of Bantam, the English withdrew from Java. An extract from the Dutch record is as follows. As to our relations with the English, these are rather poor, for we cannot come together without the English shaking their tail. Your Excellency may consider how they burst for spite, seeing our success in trade. The English have beheaded their king and are intent upon breaking with all their neighbors, especially with us, in order to secure supremacy of the sea and the monopoly of the trade. This cannot be allowed by the Dutch nation. We seem to be at war again with the English. So first of all, It's like the Dutch is like the pot calling the kettle black, because the Dutch were all about everything they're complaining about the English for. It was apparently the custom for the European traders in India to buy the cloths from the weavers and to send these out to the dyers, printers, and finishers. This practice was attended with great difficulties due to the natural indolence of white men in a tropical country, lack of knowledge of native customs and the language, and the traditional greed and tyranny of the native rulers. Okay, traditional greed and tyranny, I believe that was the Europeans and not necessarily. The natives were just trying to, keep their stuff. And the Europeans were coming in and taking it. That is greed and tyranny. Ugh. From time to time, the terrible famines and plagues of India interrupted the trade in frightful earnest. A letter from Fort St. George on the Coromandel coast gives us a lurid picture of one of these epidemics in 1687. Weavers and washers, all dead or gone, 35,000 dead at Madraspatam, and 6,000 families removed. Whole tribes of mechanics extinguished with their arts. There is but one dyer surviving in the bay. The first British printing plant was organized in Richmond near London in 1690, and while it was a very modest affair, it was rapidly followed by others. The Act of William III in 1696, prohibiting the importation of woolen goods from Ireland into England, but admitting free of duty the linen wraps used by the weavers of England in their cotton and linen cloths, gave great encouragement to this domestic trade, although an obvious injustice to Ireland. The effect of printing plants in England was soon felt in the Indian trade. Evidently, there were merchants even in those days who regarded cheapness as the prime quality in merchandise. A letter to Bombay in 1711 contains the following passage. We do find the bales of chintz are of the worst cloth and prints that ever came. Extremely dear, the printing stands us in as much as the cloth, which is a great abuse upon us for our people, here will do it at half that price and better colors and patterns. This may, of course, have been what is known as a shrewd business letter. Or maybe that even as early as these English merchants were forcing Indian craftsmen to carry out English ideas of design with the natural results. The growth of the trade of Indian printed calicos in England is only roughly suggested in the following statistics. These do not include other forms of cotton goods imported, nor the private trade, which was, while of a semi-legal character, still very extensive. In 1671, 34,000 pieces of chintz were imported into England. The pieces were only a few yards in length. In 1681, English merchants secured designs from Holland to be copied in India. It is rather curious to note, even at this time, the insistence upon originality and pattern. One letter contains the following passage. Everyone desiring something that their neighbors have not the like. Ah, yes. Natives are just trying to be native. Advocate for the underdog. Absolutely, BFD. By 1683, the demand for calico was beyond all belief. It had become the style, and everyone wanted it. The following quotation from a letter to India. Oh, guys, my voice is starting to really struggle here. You cannot imagine what a great number of the chintzes would sell here. They, being the wear of gentlewomen in Holland, make great provision of them beforehand. 20,000 of all sorts in a year will not be too much for this market, if the directions be punctually observed in providing them. So, guys, I'm going to stop there because my voice is see, hopefully I'll be back in good reading order on Monday. Oi. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Yeah, so much to think about. I'm going to hit the road. I am desperately in need of some cold medicine I'm feeling and some more cold drink. Happy New Year, you guys. I'm so happy you're here. I appreciate you so much. Yes, hot drink with honey. Absolutely. Thanks, Kate. All right, guys, have a wonderful weekend. Love you bunches. Couldn't do this without you. Good things for 2025, whether it's a crazy, ridiculous cult or more learning about the art world. We're going to do it this year. So, mwah! Love you guys. Take care.